Let me tell you a story. It's about a man who walked straight into the shadows so that we might see our own light a little better. A philosopher who didn't just have ideas. He lived them, he burned for them, and in the end, yeah, he was broken by them. This is the story of Friedrich Nietzsche.
So, our story starts, like a lot of good ones do, in a small, quiet little village. But the thing is, while the village was quiet, the child born there really wasn't. At least, not on the inside. People said his eyes didn't just see the world, they looked through it, questioning everything they saw. And this was the silent question just echoing in his head, even when he was a little kid. It wasn't just, simple curiosity. It was a deep, fundamental challenge to reality itself. Why do we believe the things we believe? Why do we live our lives the way we do? This one question would become the engine for his entire life. Now you have to picture this. He grew up in a pastor's home. It was a world of sacred rules, hymns, and this devout quiet. But Nietzsche, he was drawn to the very things he was told to ignore. The dark corners, the questions you weren't supposed to ask, the shadows. He figured out really early that you can't really appreciate the light if you're not willing to look at the darkness. And that relentless questioning, it didn't just stay in the village. It followed him right into the world of universities and academia, where those questioning eyes were destined not just to learn, but to shake the very foundations of Western thought. So get this, he was a total prodigy. I mean, his professors thought he was a genius. They all saw this great future laid out for him. But Nietzsche, he rejected it. For him, life wasn't about some comfortable, far-off goal. He wasn't interested in that. He wanted to live intensely, fiercely, right here, in what he called the great now. And that's when his life's great project really began, a conscious, deliberate rebellion. See, he wasn't just asking questions anymore. He was now actively trying to break the frames that held people's minds captive, and he was ready to face whatever shadows and whatever storms came next. He saw society as being stuck inside these, what he called, golden frames. They look beautiful, maybe, but they're still cages. Ready-made morality, faith that you just inherit without thinking about it, the unspoken rule that you must live like this. He felt like all this stuff kept the human mind in a tiny, dark room, too afraid to even open the door. And for Nietzsche, opening that door meant facing what was already inside you. It meant confronting your own shadows, all the fears you've inherited, the values you've borrowed, the parts of yourself you'd really rather not look at. Because he believed that only by walking through that personal darkness could you ever find your own true, authentic light. He actually wrote about this battle in his notebooks, like it was a real conversation. The shadow taunts him, right? Pokes at his deepest insecurity. You're afraid of being yourself. But his reply, it's just pure power. He says, I have come to understand, not to fear. He isn't trying to destroy the shadow. He's trying to understand it, to replace fear with knowledge. Okay, so this intense inner struggle, it gave birth to his most famous and probably his most misunderstood idea, the concept of the Übermensch, or as it's often translated, the Overman. This was his answer to the question, what could a human being become after breaking all their chains? All right, first things first, let's get something straight. This is not about a superhero or some kind of master race. That's a total misreading. The Overman is a metaphor for human potential. It represents the person who stops inheriting their values, what society tells you is good or bad, and starts creating their own. It's the person who doesn't just get through hardship, but actually uses it as fuel to get stronger. So what does this completed human look like in practice? Well, they reject imitation. They refuse to be just a copy of someone else. Instead of following some pre-written script for life, they create their own moral compass. And, this is crucial, they can stand alone. They embrace solitude, not as a punishment, but as the quiet space you need to finally hear your own thoughts. To really hammer this point home, Nietzsche told this simple but, wow, incredibly powerful little story. Imagine a man tied up. Someone offers to set him free, and he says no. Why? Because the rope binding him is made of pure gold. It's beautiful, it's comfortable, it's familiar. And that is Nietzsche's devastating punchline. We often fall in love with our own limitations, don't we? We cling to the comfortable job, the familiar beliefs, these golden chains that keep us from becoming who we could be. Because a chain is still a chain, no matter how beautifully it shines. This brings us to the ultimate test of the human spirit. Nietzsche called it the eternal return. So, I want you to imagine this. A demon appears and gives you a choice. Your exact life, every single triumph, every heartbreak, every moment of joy, and every second of agony will repeat over and over again forever. Would you be horrified? Or would you say yes?
His answer is a powerful, resounding yes. And the reason why is the key to his entire philosophy. To say yes to this endless repetition is to affirm everything about your life, including the pain. It's the ultimate act of taking ownership, of declaring that your suffering has the meaning that you, and only you, give it.
But as you can probably guess, a man who thinks like this, who brings such a storm of ideas to the world, he often finds himself standing in that storm completely alone. His radical thoughts led to some pretty profound isolation and misunderstanding. This might be his most famous quote, and it just perfectly captures his loneliness. He was dancing to music that nobody else could hear. So to the outside world, his movements just looked erratic, insane. But for him, he was just following a rhythm, a truth that was completely his own. The cost of living with that kind of intensity, it was immense. His health fell apart, and then one day in Turin, Italy, his mind finally gave way. He saw a horse being brutally whipped in the street, threw his arms around its neck, and just collapsed, weeping. He spent the last decade of his life in a silent twilight. The Stormbringer had finally been consumed by the storm. And yet, here's the wild part. In his silence, his ideas began to roar. The world slowly started to catch up, to finally hear the music. People realized he was never a prophet of despair. He was a prophet of immense courage. He became a voice for anyone who ever felt different, anyone who was trying to find their own truth, their own flame in the darkness. And so we end with his most vital, most enduring challenge. It's not really a conclusion. It's a beginning. It's a command, a question for you. Will you just accept the values you've been given, or will you find the courage to break those golden frames and create your own meaning?